My in-laws caught us completely off guard when they moved in without any prior notice. At first, I thought they were merely delivering a large package, but to my astonishment, they emerged from the front door, stating they had no intention of paying rent or doing any chores. They insisted that we take care of them and demanded the biggest room, expecting us to assist with their move. It was surreal. My father-in-law, Austin, and brother-in-law, Owen, had simply barged in and started giving orders about rearranging things. The situation was so absurd that I couldn't help but chuckle, finding humor in the midst of the chaos. With a grin, I reassured them, "It's totally fine," and promptly called my husband, knowing he would be home soon. I couldn't help but wonder how he would react to this unexpected mess, especially considering that the ones who had mocked me were his own family. As anticipated, my husband arrived home, visibly upset with Austin and Owen. However, he surprised everyone by showing them a document. I couldn't contain my amusement as I watched his father and brother's expressions change, understanding that they had no grounds to stay here without our consent. In the end, the tables turned, and it was I who moved out of the house. My name is Catherine Miller, a 34-year-old remote worker. Due to certain family circumstances, I opted for a job that allowed me to work from home, giving me the flexibility to manage household chores and explore new recipes whenever I pleased. I met my husband, Michael Miller, through a dating app during the peak of a flu outbreak. Despite his frequent business trips, Michael wanted us to live together so I wouldn't feel lonely. We fell in love quickly, and marriage was on our minds. However, my irregular periods made it difficult for us to conceive, leading to emotional struggles. Opening up to Michael brought us closer, and we resolved to face life's challenges together. Our peaceful life was disrupted when Michael's father, Austin Miller, called us, complaining about not receiving greetings from our end. Although Michael had reservations about meeting his father, we decided to visit his parents' home. His reluctance was evident as we prepared to go, his frown deepening with every step. Throughout the journey, Michael's displeasure was palpable. He remained silent, clearly indicating his desire to avoid the impending encounter. I wished I knew the reasons behind his aversion, but he chose not to share. Despite my curiosity, I respected his silence, hoping he would eventually open up and confide in me. As we approached his parents' house, we carried a box of pastries as a gesture of goodwill. Michael's tension was undeniable, reflecting the complex relationship he had with his father. I had anticipated receiving sarcastic remarks, but I mustered the courage and left the house. Stress often gave me stomach aches, a fact not lost on Michael, who looked at me with concern and asked, "Are you okay? Should we do this another time?" "I think I'm fine," I replied, attempting to steady my nerves. "It wouldn't be right if we didn't greet your father, right?" It was the same father who had complained over the phone, and there was an air about him that suggested he wouldn't forgive us easily. The situation felt more troublesome than anything else. Michael, too, seemed to sense the tension and was eager to drive, perhaps to keep himself distracted. I couldn't shake the feeling that there were deep-seated issues at his childhood home. Meeting such a father-in-law could be tiresome, but I never regretted choosing Michael. I cherished the kindness he showed me and his occasional clumsiness. It was these little things that meant the most. Lost in thought, we eventually arrived at Michael's childhood home, which was conveniently close to our apartment. It was within walking distance, just a short stroll away if we ever felt like it. As I entered his house, his father greeted me with a big smile. Michael, on the other hand, gave his father a slight glare as he stepped inside. From a room deeper inside the house, I could hear Michael's raised voice. "You can't just mooch off Dad because you're unemployed and stay at home all day. How old do you even think you are?" "Shut up. What I do isn't any of your business." Owen, Michael's brother, defiantly held his own. To sum up the argument, Owen had been living an unemployed lifestyle since his late 20s, without any valid reason like health issues. It was simply because he felt jobs didn't suit him. while Michael understood the desire for a job that suited one's preferences. It was frustrating to see Owen not even attempting to find one. Their father was no different, constantly bringing home different women and ending relationships time after time. Michael always said there was no way they could be happy living like that. "I'm not here to babysit the two of you. I came to announce that Catherine and I are getting married," Michael declared firmly. Yeah, got it. If you want to brag about being happy, do it somewhere else. I'm good if I can just live with Dad." Owen brushed off the confrontation, deeply engrossed in his video game. Annoyed by the sight, Michael was about to react when we realized his father was looming over us. "Catherine, huh? If you're going to marry Michael, you better be ready to take care of his family. Once you're married to Michael, we're family. You get that?" "While that might be true, I didn't think it was mandatory." "While that may be true, I don't think it's mandatory," I replied, trying to stand my ground. "What did you just say, young lady? You've got some nerve. I'll teach you some respect for your elders." Suddenly, his father raised his voice, and I was snapped back to reality, taken aback. Michael quickly pulled my hand, and we managed to leave the house. Dread washed over me as his father, appearing more like a terrifying monster, began chasing us. There was something deeply unsettling about that family. The fear lingered, even as we attempted to choose an apartment. His father always seemed to beat us to it, deciding for us. To prevent such incidents from recurring, Michael and I decided we needed to move. Thanks to my job in web-related work, I had the flexibility to work from anywhere with just a computer. My job wasn't the issue, but Michael's was. While he enjoyed household chores, he also owned a carpentry business, often traveling for work. Consequently, I ended up handling most of the moving process. There was an inevitability to our situation, but I couldn't shake the feeling that his father and the jobless Owen might visit. Given my knack for bad premonitions turning true, all I could do was hope they wouldn't come. In the meantime, I proceeded with the moving arrangements, taking Michael's opinions into account. I wanted to get everything sorted before they potentially showed up at our house. Once the moving process was done, I was finally able to shift to working from home. There were still a few loose ends, including contacting a representative regarding a web video project I had discussed earlier. While I was engrossed in messaging and talking on the phone, I heard a knock on the front door. Michael usually didn't bother knocking. He would simply walk in. The unexpected visitor puzzled me. Could it be his father and Owen? The thought sent a shiver down my spine. As I contemplated this, a loud, aggressive voice echoed from behind the door. It was his father, Austin. Panic set in. Michael wasn't back yet, which meant I had to handle this situation alone. Perhaps talking to him would resolve things. I ended my call with the client and cautiously approached the front door. The relentless knocking only confirmed my suspicions. It had to be his father. Uncertain of his intentions, but determined to protect our peace, I mustered a polite greeting and opened the door slightly. Before I could react, Owen forcefully pushed the door open, dropping a large bag at the entrance with a satisfied grin. He theatrically collapsed onto a chair, exclaiming, "I'm exhausted." I asked Austin what was going on, and he explained, "We couldn't pay the mortgage on our place, so we sold it and decided to move. Naturally, we won't pay any rent or do any chores, so take care of us." With a self-centered air, both his father and Owen strolled into our apartment. Owen, lugging his baggage, scanned the rooms to decide where he would settle. Meanwhile, his father, after depositing his enormous bag in the living room, began to complain about the room size. "Come on, this apartment is meant for 2 people, you know. If we're going to have 4 people living here, we might need to find another place." However, Michael and I had already chosen our next home, and our moving date was just around the corner. "I'm going to take the upstairs room," Owen declared, showing no consideration for the situation. "Catherine, can you tidy up this room for me? And haven't you put too much stuff in the living room? There's no space for us to even eat together." I was left utterly speechless by their audacity, as they said whatever pleased them without any regard for courtesy. Deciding that I needed to inform Michael about the situation, I was suddenly startled by the sound of someone punching a wall, most likely out of anger. However, the words that followed provided a small relief, indicating that I might not have to deal with these two any longer. Unfortunately, due to work circumstances, Michael couldn't return to the apartment. The burden of handling the situation fell upon me, and as a woman, facing two men alone felt unsafe. So, I decided to make a call for help. The person I called was a friend who had previously assisted both Michael and me with our moving preparations. She happened to live in a building constructed by Michael's company, and her name was Olivia Lewis. Olivia was a CEO who owned properties overseas. When I explained the situation to Olivia, she expressed her unease about the father and son in my home. Soon enough, they arrived at our apartment, arrogantly scattering their belongings everywhere. Despite the fact that Michael and I were the rightful owners of the apartment, with me being the leaseholder due to my remote work, they seemed oblivious to the reality. With a gracious smile, I told the two clueless men, "That's totally fine. We're moving out of this apartment anyway." His father, appearing desperate, clung to me. I couldn't hide my condescending look as I firmly stated, "Don't cling to me looking so pitiful. It's embarrassing." He was on the verge of tears, trying to reason. "It's a joke, right? Tell me it's a joke." I responded sternly, "It's not a joke, Austin. Michael and I decided this together. There's no way I'd joke about it now." The same man who had been smug about the living room just a while ago was now clinging to me, looking truly pitiable. Owen, puzzled by the scene between his father and me, came downstairs and couldn't believe what he was witnessing. "Dad, are you seriously trying to make a move on Michael's wife? Now that's just unbelievable," Owen remarked. I had a few choice words for Owen, who was making such comments. To begin with, as soon as he arrived at our place, I was infuriated by his audacity in searching for his own room in a house he hadn't even rented. Their actions were beyond my comprehension. If anyone should be saying unbelievable, it's my line. You folks moving into someone else's house is just unbelievable. You didn't even have a lease. What made you think you could just move in and live here? Realizing that I needed assistance in dealing with this situation, I decided to call Olivia, who held considerable authority as both the landlord of an apartment complex and its general manager. Olivia was a respected figure in the area, often referred to as the CEO due to her prominence. There was no way they could talk their way out of this once she arrived. Olivia soon arrived at the parking lot and entered the room. Olivia assessed the situation alongside me and the two men and seemed to grasp the core issue. She decided to contact Michael to address the matter. After a brief conversation with Michael, Olivia appeared to have resolved the issue. Her expression was dead serious as she inquired, "Did you handle the tax declaration after selling your house?" "No, not yet," I admitted. "That's odd. We can't lease you the apartment without that. Please ensure you've reported it correctly, and then we may proceed with this room," Olivia explained, demonstrating a meticulous approach. When dealing with individuals like the ones we were facing, legal knowledge was essential to have a fair conversation. Michael must have been well aware of his father's troublesome nature. His father had a reputation for being self-centered and engaging in extramarital affairs, a story Michael had shared with me before one of his business trips. Michael's mother had left their house after discovering his father's infidelity, and her departure left Michael feeling remorseful. She had even hugged Michael apologetically before leaving, expressing guilt for leaving him in such a household. Michael had then taken over all the household chores. However, his father's philandering behavior only worsened over time, while Owen kept jumping from one job to another before ultimately becoming unemployed around the age of 28. He took pride in receiving unemployment benefits and eventually withdrew from social interaction, feeling overwhelmed. Faced with the daunting task of taking care of Owen and their father, Michael decided to marry me. They were diligent in paying utility bills, but occasionally skipped out on insurance premiums and other minor fees. Michael even worried about being unable to complete the house loan payments. Realizing that they weren't responsible adults, Michael eventually decided it was time to move out. When his father began arguing with Olivia, Michael sent me a message instructing me to intervene. I stepped in between his father and Olivia and calmly stated, "Excuse me, but Michael and I are moving out tomorrow due to some reasons." His father seemed taken aback and asked, "Hey, hold on. What's going on? I didn't hear about this from Michael. Shouldn't he inform his father when he's moving?" I replied, "He said he didn't want to talk to you about it. He thinks it's best to live separately from a philandering, selfish person like you and Owen." To emphasize my point, I showed his father our conversation on WhatsApp, where Michael had voiced his dissatisfaction with his father. Although I had only been a listener, I had gathered a very negative impression of their past actions. Even during our brief interactions, I couldn't help but find it peculiar for his father and Owen to move into our apartment. Based solely on that fact, I had doubts about the reliability of this father and son duo. Olivia interjected during his father's grumbling, explaining, "Even if Catherine leaves, if you, Austin, don't declare the sale of your previous house, you won't be able to rent an apartment in the future." Austin, appearing somewhat baffled, responded, "But I have money on hand. Isn't that enough?" Olivia clarified, "No, it's not just about selling the house and being done, Austin. If you don't declare it, there are penalties. You'll be the one at a loss. Are you okay with that?" Austin reluctantly agreed, acknowledging the point. Olivia's reasoning made sense in the context of real estate transactions. If he had sold the previous house, he would eventually need to report it to the local authorities. Perhaps he hadn't even reported it to the real estate agency, which would be suspicious. Given their lack of research and understanding, it was evident that Austin and Owen had moved into our place without considering the necessary procedures. As I examined the documents Olivia had brought, it was apparent that they didn't comprehend any of it. I had been fielding questions from Austin and Owen about the documents and couldn't help but wonder how long it would take for them to grasp the situation. Michael and I had resided in this apartment for quite some time, and we had taken the initiative to research the necessary procedures. That's why everything went so smoothly for us. There were always pros and cons to everything, and it seemed like common sense to check things out before making such a significant move. Yet they had moved into our place without giving it any thought, which I found highly questionable. The ones acting recklessly were Austin and Owen. In that moment, Olivia decided to issue a warning to the two of them. "Please don't assume you can just move into this apartment immediately. I'll check everything thoroughly and get back to you. Then we can decide on the next steps," Olivia said firmly. Owen seemed to understand, sitting quietly and listening. To be on the safe side, I chose to spend the night at my parents' house as the apartment was going to be rented out the next day. I didn't want to sleep with two guys, especially ones who lacked common sense. Considering the risk of getting involved in some mess, I decided to let Michael's father and his brother stay in my apartment. Olivia, whom I got along with at the real estate agency, had suggested it too, indicating there might have been genuine issues. If anything went wrong, it could ruin our moving plans with Michael. I entrusted the situation to Olivia, the real estate agent, and informed Michael to proceed with the preparations for our new place. I stayed in touch with Olivia to check on how the two were doing. Based on her recommendation, the apartment was rented to Michael's father and Owen for just a few days. Olivia needed to verify if they had properly completed the necessary procedures at the real estate agency, and if they had been paying their taxes regarding the house they claimed to have sold. She also had to contact the associated real estate firm. It turned out that not only had they neglected post-sale procedures, but they also hadn't paid their taxes. Moreover, Olivia reported them to the police, suspecting they might have run off with just the sale money, hinting at a potential scam. To be safe, Olivia decided to inform Michael's father and Owen, who were staying in the apartment. If false information was provided to the real estate company, penalties would surely be enforced. They would not only have to pay the taxes, but also face potential penalties. I wondered how much money would be left in the end. According to what I heard from Olivia, it seemed that it might even go into the negative. The reason was that they had only consulted one real estate agency, which had good reviews and word-of-mouth recommendations. They believed the estimate would be the same no matter which agency they asked. Another task they had neglected was the property transfer process. In simple terms, it involved changing the property's name from Michael's father to the new owner. If there was any outstanding mortgage on the house, it should have been paid from the sale. But as expected, they hadn't paid it, turning the situation into a case with interrogations regarding the amount due and possible fraud. What was particularly bad was Michael's father insisting he knew nothing about it. As for Owen, he couldn't return to his old home, and he lost our apartment. He was forced to find a job with housing provided. However, he only had experience being a shut-in and living off his parents. Eventually, my parents took him in, but they made it clear that once he found a job with housing, he had to move out. With some guidance from my parents, it seemed he might secure a job. I hoped Michael's father and Owen would learn to live responsibly. Meanwhile, Michael and I decided to relocate overseas. Michael's hard work had been recognized, and he was offered a project abroad in Spain. However, both of us were Americans who couldn't speak Spanish. We diligently studied, trying to learn basic conversation skills. I wanted to be able to hold everyday conversations as much as possible. More than anything, it was my first time going on a business trip abroad, so there was a part of me that was really excited. Michael's job was overseas, so he started looking at potential homes for us. He kept me updated through messages and calls, always trying to ensure I wasn't anxious. Today, from the airport, I received a call from a worried Michael, who was about to fly to Spain. "Are you okay? I know it's been hard because of my dad and brother. I'm totally fine. I'm more excited about living abroad with you," I reassured him. "Good to hear," Michael said, his voice filled with relief. His relief made me happy too. We were now free from those two, and we were going to enjoy our lives. To achieve that, we would keep studying, learn new things, and adapt to our new life. Everything was going to be all right. And so, our life in Spain began. A child came into our lives, and our daily routine changed as a family of 3. We cherished our happiness and continued to live strongly every day.